After 28 years, the Hillsborough families edge even closer to justice. There's more bad news for the NHS and the death of a former England manager. You're watching 5 News Tonight. 23 people and organisations involved in the 1989 Hillsborough disaster are identified as criminal suspects.
This, I feel now, we're on the road to the end.
NHS bed blocking is up more than 40% in just a year. Doctors and nurses groups say they've never seen it so bad. And the former England, Watford and Aston Villa manager Graham Taylor died at the age of 72. Also tonight we're talking about the weather. Britain braces itself as a 3-day freeze kicks in and blizzard conditions sweep much of the country. And we'll meet the stars of the hit movie that everyone's making a song and dance about. Good evening, this is 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. The people involved in the Hillsborough disaster could now face criminal proceedings 28 years after the tragedy happened. Files on 23 people and organisations have now been handed to investigating authorities. Margaret Aspinall, whose son James was among 96 Liverpool fans who were killed that day, says this is a momentous day. From Liverpool, here's Peter Lane.
Justice! Now this'll all believe us. Unlawful.
At the close of last year's Hillsborough inquest, the victims' families made it clear their long fight wasn't over. The coroner's court ruled the deaths were unlawful killing, but there's never been a criminal prosecution. Now, almost 28 years after the disaster, files have been sent to the Crown Prosecution Service. They're considering potential charges against 23 individuals and organisations. For Margaret Aspinall, who heads the family's campaign and who lost her son at Hillsborough, it is a turning point.
This is a momentous day today, because after, all the things that we've been through, private prosecution, scrutiny, judicial reviews, this, I feel now, we're on the road to the end.
15 of the suspects are linked to Operation Resolve, which looked at the causes of the disaster. Potential charges include gross negligence, manslaughter, perverting the course of justice, misconduct in public office and health and safety offences. A further 8 suspects come from the IPCC's investigation into South Yorkshire Police and West Midlands Police and the alleged cover-up, with possible offences including perverting the course of justice, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and misconduct in public office.
This has been an absolutely enormous investigation. I think probably the biggest criminal investigation into police that's ever taken place in this country. In addition to that, it's also been supporting the longest running inquest in the country and having to do both of those. So it's very substantial. We've have over 200 staff working on it, and we've been working on it for 4 years.
At last year's inquest, the jury found Match Commander David Duckenfield, on the right here, responsible for manslaughter by gross negligence. But the coroner made it clear his court was not holding a trial. No names have been released today identifying anyone facing possible charges. The families of the 96 Hillsborough victims have been told it may take 6 months before decisions are reached on charges, but they, of course, have already spent years waiting for answers and accountability. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Joining me now, Barry Devonside, who lost his 18-year-old son Christopher at Hillsborough. He joins us from Anfield in Liverpool. And here in the studio is Daniel McIver, who's a civil litigation lawyer. Barry, I'd like to ask you first. Margaret Aspinall says today is a momentous day. How do you feel?
In one way it's momentous, in another it's quite a disappointment. £45 million has cost the country for these investigations at the IPCC and Operation Resolve. To think that the IPCC investigating the police and the part that they played in this disaster have only come up with 8 referrals to the Crown Prosecution. From my point of view, and many of the families I'm involved with, that is a disappointment. Not only were they investigating what happened on the day of the disaster, but they were investigating a serious cover-up within the South Yorkshire Police, and that is a disappointment.
For you, is the cover-up almost worse than the mistakes that were made on that day in 1989?
the cover-up was the mistakes on that particular day cost the lives of 96 people and over 700 people had been injured. The cover-up was deceit, and it was the worst kind of deceit. A professional body of police officers are there to uphold the law, not break the law. From that point of view, all of the families have been endeavouring to fight for justice for those who lost their lives on the 15th of April in 1989.
Daniel, we don't know the names of the people or the organisations, these 23 entities whose names have been given over to the Crown Prosecution Service to have a look at. But we do know the possible charges. So offences that are being considered: gross negligence, manslaughter, perverting the course of justice, and misconduct in a public office. Just expand on those a little bit more. What do they mean?
Well, first of all, we should pay tribute, I think, today to the Hillsborough families for their incredibly difficult and long fight to get to this point, and to those that supported them, like organisations like Inquest. But in relation to these allegations that are now going to be looked at by the Crown Prosecution Service, probably with a leading barrister, they relate to as well the deaths specifically. We can look at, therefore, the offence of gross negligence, manslaughter. There, you have to prove that there was negligence, that it was negligence to a level that was gross, and that it caused the deaths. So there are issues of causation, and there's the criminal standard of proof in relation to those elements, and the burden of proof is on the Crown. But a lot of the evidence that was deployed at the inquest will, of course, be there for those to look at, those who need to make those decisions to look at it.
But those other ones, like perverting the course of justice,
Yes.
misconduct in a public office, they in particular relate to what Barry's talking about there, the IPCC, Independent Police Complaints Commission, investigation into how police reacted after the Hillsborough disaster.
They in fact relate to both. So those, from what I can understand, the 15 people who have been referred in relation to the conduct on the day are also facing potential allegations of perverting the course of justice and misconduct in a public office. But the others, the 8 who have been referred in relation to the alleged cover-up, they are specifically facing allegations of pervert the course of justice, conspiracy to pervert. So basically, in both groups, you've got some of the same allegations. Only gross negligence, manslaughter can apply to those 15 who have referred for the day.
It's taken 28 years
Yes.
for the likes of Barry and Margaret Aspinall and all the families of the 96 to get to this point. How much longer could it take?
Well, I'm sure they know, and they've been advised that it could be lengthy. Of course, pressure needs to be maintained on the Crown Prosecution Service to resource this adequately, for the barrister or barristers who are working with the Crown to be on tap, to be ready, for the IPCC and Operation Resolve to be ready to respond quickly to any requests made by the CPS during the investigation. But it could take several years, and of course, if there are prosecutions that follow, which I hope there's sufficient evidence to justify prosecutions, then they, of course, may take several years further. So this is still a long path.
Let me just go back to Barry. And Barry, the inquests and, of course, their results, their conclusion, were a huge breakthrough for you and the rest of the families. Do you feel that the momentum that has ensued since can carry on and this can be resolved perhaps quicker than it has so far?
Well, let me say that the majority of the families, if not all of the families, will carry on fighting the Crown Prosecution Service, or should I say, pushing as hard as we can the Crown Prosecution Service and the IPCC and Operation Resolve. Let me say there's still 150 files still to be examined yet, so there could be additional people that may be sent to the CPS at a later date. Now, regarding the length of time, I take on board what's been said by your colleague there, the legal expert, but we are just ordinary people wanting to fight for justice for those we lost. And time, whilst we've got it, we'll continue fighting all the way to bring justice to 96 people who lost their lives.
Barry Devonside, Daniel McIver, thank you both very much indeed. Now, large parts of the UK are experiencing what the Met Office is calling a real taste of winter. Strong winds, snow and freezing temperatures have caused travel disruption and power cuts, while residents in one village in Essex are being told to leave their homes because of a flood risk there. Dominic Reynolds has the latest.
This morning on Saddleworth Moor, it already looked like only the bravest truck drivers were making the crossing. And as this weather moves further south, it's predicted to get more powerful, delivering more wind, more snow. And as the gritters prepared the ground in South Wales, elsewhere in the UK, 80 flights were being grounded at Heathrow Airport, the UK's busiest. The rain was falling steadily in Jaywick in Essex tonight, but there are fears that winds and rain will mean tomorrow these homes will be in danger. Police and fire officers will start evacuating the entire town at dawn.
We're assisting Essex Police, who are leading the operation, in evacuating the residents of Jaywick, who are currently on the risk at the moment from that east coast tidal surge that is predicted to come in tomorrow.
This is what the approaching weather looked like this morning. That's snow coming in from the left of the picture.
The source of the air is coming in from the Canadian Arctic, cold air moving across relatively mild seas, producing showers, and these showers are hitting the cold air across the UK and turning to snow.
It meant Scotland woke up to a covering. These roads were passable, but there are warnings that tonight snow could turn to ice and drivers should be ready.
Drive slightly slower and drive more smoothly. No sharp braking, that tends to lead to skids. If there is ice and you're trying to get up a hill, it's often better to do it in second gear rather than first gear.
While some people this afternoon were taking advantage of new transport opportunities, the weather is likely to slow down much of the rest of the UK. Yellow be aware warnings are in place, and for anyone heading to an airport, the advice is check before you go. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News.
And you can do that with Claire, who'll be back at the end of the programme with the full weather forecast, of course. Another day, another strong indication of the struggles facing the NHS in England this winter. Tonight, it's the latest figures on waiting times at A&E departments, and they show the targets were missed for the 16th month in a row. In November, just over 88% of patients were seen within 4 hours. The target is 95%. Why? Well, doctors say it's partly because of poor social care, which means they can't send patients home. There was a 42% rise in delays in discharging patients, in fact. On one day, November the 24th, nearly 7,000 people were waiting to be discharged. That's the highest ever recorded. More people are also going to A&E. Attendances rose by 4.5% on the year before. Simon Viger has been seeing how staff at Milton Keynes University Hospital are trying to cope.
Children's A&E at Milton Keynes Hospital. They're better than the national average for waiting times here, but short of the target of 95% within 4 hours. And they say every winter it's worse.
This is probably the busiest that we've been, I think, for a very long time, without a doubt. In terms of the numbers, in terms of the seriousness of the illness that we're seeing in all patients, and from children to the elderly.
The 2 patients in black here have been waiting over 4 hours. The 3 reds are 3 to 4 hours. National figures for November show all the key targets have been missed as tensions mount between NHS England and the government. The patients do not blame the frontline staff.
Some people come to A&E when they could go to their GPs. We've all done it. I think it's just the amount of people that attend A&E puts constant pressure on staff.
About a hip problem. The pain's changed in the hip, so I've come to get checked out.
And how long have you been waiting?
About an hour and a half.
And it was Monday, I was busy, and I feel sorry for them. They're running about and they're chickens basically.
More people are living longer and more of them are being brought to A&E rather than being treated in the community. The boss here believes he has a whole ward of people who should never have been brought to hospital in the first place.
Supporting care homes, nursing homes and supporting patients in their own home is where I would look to put additional funding, which might seem strange from an acute trust chief executive.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there should be more money, but not here, in other areas.
I think that funding would enable us to free up capacity in acute hospitals to cope with the pressures that we're under.
It doesn't matter if every bed is taken, the ambulances still come. And that means tough choices are made in every hospital, every hour of the day. Simon Viger, 5 News, Milton Keynes.
Still to come on 5 News tonight. The movie that everyone is talking about, singing about in fact, La La Land gets its UK premiere. We'll hear from its stars and we'll find out why it is just so good. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back. Last night we told you about that extraordinary dossier which contained unverified information about President-elect Donald Trump's private life, apparently, and his alleged links to Russia. Well, tonight the former MI6 officer who's said to be behind that dossier, Christopher Steele, is reported to have gone into hiding. And Donald Trump himself has said America's top spy chief has called him to denounce the allegations. Our political editor Andy Bell unpicks the story.
Has the president-elect been undermined by America's intelligence agencies, or has he been compromised by the Russian Secret Service? Yesterday, it was plain Donald Trump was furious about that leaked dossier.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out.
This morning he tweeted, "James Clapper, the head of US National Intelligence, called me yesterday to denounce the false and fictitious report that was illegally circulated. Made up, phony facts. Too bad." But publicly, James Clapper has not said that. He's denounced the fact the report was leaked, but he's made no judgment on whether it's true. This is what he's talking about, a dossier shown to both President Obama and the president-elect. It alleges the Russian Secret Service have material, for instance, lurid sex tapes, that could leave Mr. Trump open to blackmail. But that dossier was put together by a former British spy named Christopher Steele, and this is his London office. Christopher Steele was an MI6 agent in Moscow, but since leaving, his company has carried out investigations for commercial clients. There was no answer at the office today, and he has not been seen since his dossier so infuriated the president-elect. Donald Trump has visited Russia. This was 2013, but some familiar with the country are sceptical about the dossier's claims to have penetrated the Russian spy network.
Those sorts of targets are very hard to penetrate, and one of the great faults with this dossier is that it implies a level of penetration which, if they did really achieve it, would be far more than Western intelligence agencies have achieved over the time that I've been aware of this stuff.
The president-elect's adamant there's no truth in these claims, but just a week before he takes office, it's extraordinary the allegations are being made at all. Andy Bell, 5 News.
Next up, as I'm sure you've heard, there's a big song and dance around a new musical, La La Land. The film has already won 7 Golden Globes and has 11 BAFTA nominations under its belt. Its British premiere, finally, is tonight. Now, in a moment, I'll be speaking to film critic Rhianna Dillon, but first, let's have a look at the film. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone have both been celebrated for their roles. Gosling even learnt to play the piano for the part, and we heard from them both a little bit earlier on.
The response to the film has been so wonderful, and the fact that people are seeing it multiple times and it's like a universe that people want to keep revisiting is more than we could have expected. And then on top of that, to have it be acknowledged in these other ways is just it's kind of like a movie. It's the experience of this movie has been like a movie.
My favorite thing about the experience was how close everybody got, because we had 3 months of rehearsal and then we shot for 2 months, so it was almost half a year that the whole crew was together working on this. So I've never experienced a movie where, I mean, we all text all the time, we're all sharing everything. It's been so special in that way that we're all just so kind of excited and connected. So that, I mean, that's what I take away from it.
So Rihanna's with me now. The first thing to say is they both just seem like really likeable, genuine stars.
Yes, they absolutely are. They feel like, you know, when you're watching them, watching like an old school Hollywood couple, like, you know, Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, you know, they have that real star quality.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to watch that develop. You know, we've seen them before in Crazy Stupid Love and Gangster Squad. We've seen them sparkle, and we can't wait to see what they're going to do next as well.
He's a bit Paul Newman-esque, isn't he?
Oh,
And
yes.
we've talked about it on 5 News Tonight before, about how Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood. It obviously did very well at the Golden Globes. You've seen it twice.
Yeah.
Just why is it so good?
It's a very optimistic film, I suppose. So after quite a dismal year for a lot of us, it's really lovely to see a film which is so vibrant and happy and kind of looking forward to the future. It's about two people who are really excited about what their lives hold for them. They're really pushing for what's next. And I think a lot of us are going to take that on board and be like, actually, we can do better.
And from the maker of Whiplash as well, which was a fantastic,
That was one of my favourite films.
Oscar-nominated
Yes.
film.
So good.
Now, the other thing to point out with this, and we heard that Mr. Gosling learned to play the piano a bit. That's what the jury seem to like at the awards, isn't it? I mean, you know, last year it was Leonardo DiCaprio climbing inside a horse, filming in sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah.
They expect the stars to go a bit above and beyond what's necessary to get that statuette.
Absolutely, and I think for a lot of people it's surprising to see someone like Ryan Gosling singing and dancing, but remember he was, you know, in the Mickey Mouse Club along with Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears, so
whatever happened to them?
Well, exactly. What a great club to be a part of. You know, he has all that under his belt, so he knows what he's doing. He might not let on as much, but I think that adds to the charm of the film. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but I think that's a little bit put on, but it works.
Rihanna, many thanks indeed for coming in. Good to see you.
No worries, thank you.
Football is mourning one of its most popular figures. Graham Taylor has died of a suspected heart attack at the age of 72. He was a hugely successful manager at Watford and Aston Villa and was also England boss for 3 years. His time in charge of the national team wasn't without its critics. Fans and those within the game, though, have been remembering a generous and truly decent man. Julian Drucker looks back at his life.
He was certainly not the most successful England manager, but Graham Taylor was one of the game's gentlemen. The no-nonsense northerner reached the pinnacle of English football and in 1990 took on what he described the impossible job.
We are looking for the win, but we're certainly not looking to be beaten.
In an unprecedented move, he allowed a documentary crew to film the team's faltering campaign to qualify for the 1994 World Cup.
Can we not knock it? What are they being instructed?
Under intense pressure, Taylor coined an immortal catchphrase.
Do I not like that?
His resignation came soon after, famously and unkindly likened to a turnip. No England manager before or since has been as pilloried by the press as much as he. Aged 72, Graham Taylor's family said he died of a suspected heart attack early this morning. Paying tribute on Twitter, former England star Alan Shearer wrote, "Completely shocked by news of Graham Taylor. Always held him in the highest regard. The man who gave me my first England cap. So sad." Peter Crouch, who played under Taylor at Aston Villa, said had so much respect for him, gave me my Premier League debut, and I will always be thankful. Taylor's own debut in the game came as a player. In 1962 he joined Grimsby Town. But his 2 stints as manager of Watford are the stuff of footballing legend. He took them from the lower leagues into the old First Division. With club chairman Sir Elton John alongside him, they made an intriguing double act. Today the star shared a treasured picture on social media and wrote, "He was like a brother to me. We shared an unbreakable bond since we first met. I love you, Graham." He'll also be remembered for his time at Aston Villa and latterly as a pundit. But most of all, Graham Taylor will be recalled as one of the most genuine figures in the beautiful game.
Well, I'm joined now in the studio by sports news editor at The Sun, Rob Moore, and also Watford legend Luther Blissett. Luther, thanks so much for talking to us. There he is. Now, look, Graham Taylor brought you into the first team at Watford. You went on to be the club's record goal scorer. You owe the man an awful lot.
I do, yeah. The opportunity first was given to me because I was going to be let go
so I found out later, but Tom Woolley spoke to him and said, this young lad's worth you keeping and persevering with, because he could turn out to be a good one. And thankfully, Graham listened, and, you know, history proves that he was right.
You also went on to play for England, not under him when he was England manager, of course. No. He did sell you, though, to Milan, and then he brought you back again. What was that like?
Yeah, I remember the actual, when I actually decided I was going to go. And he did actually say to me at the last minute, when, you know, before I made the decision, he said, if you want to change your mind now and not go, we'll walk away, you know, and we'll look forward to the new season. And I thought about it and I said, no, it's a new challenge, you know, playing I mean, they were world champions at the time as well. So it'd be a great opportunity for me. So I went. And I mean, unfortunately, it was a bit more defensive and a bit more negative the way the game was than I enjoyed playing football. So the opportunity came to go back to Watford, and it was just something I thought, why not? Because I love playing football at Watford and I love the people there and the supporters and everything. And so it was fairly an easy decision for me. And I went, no, I'll go back to what I know, because at least I'll enjoy my football.
And you enjoyed playing the Graham Taylor way. What was he like as a manager? Was he an arm around the shoulder manager?
The Graham Taylor way was, you know, attack your opposition, make life difficult for them. And that's what we did. You know, we had some very good players, the likes of John Barnes, Nigel Callaghan, Ross Jenkins, Jacket and whatever. We had some very good players. So, you know, we went out and just played to the strengths of what we had.
Plenty of people, Rob, will remember his time as England manager as not the most successful, but even through all of that, and, you know, your newspaper, you weren't there at the time, but The Sun calling him a turnip, which is incredibly unkind, he still maintained the air of a generous, friendly, warm gentleman.
I think you have to put in the context that every England manager gets a bad ride.
Quite.
Obviously, Graham, we remember those headlines, and they were unfortunate at the time, but even after he left England management, he went into the media, and there was never any bitterness or aggression towards members of my trade who were around at that time. And what I think, obviously, Luther worked under him, a great club manager, but also a great person. That's what the tributes are saying today, a really decent, warm man, basically.
Well, very quickly they came out, and all sorts of big names in the game, Peter Crouch and Alan Shearer, and not just fans of Watford, where, of course, he is a legend to the fans, even Luton Town fans, their arch rivals, coming out saying he'll be missed. He was a real gentleman of the game.
Well, that's the point. He took Watford from the sort of full tier into the top flight, took him to an FA Cup final. Yeah. He achieved great things. It didn't work with England, but he was a man engrossed in football, basically.
Luther, last quick question to you. Elton John said he was like a brother, said he loved Graham Taylor. What was it like having the two of them together as chairman and manager at Watford when you were there?
It was incredible, because in fact, I say it's a brother, but Graham was almost the older brother and kept Elton John in check, you know, which was brilliant. But Graham was great for all of us because he led in the correct way, and he he was a good teacher to all of us. And to me, he was my footballing father, and I will be forever grateful for what Graham Taylor did and the way he went about his football just with people.
Luther, thanks so much indeed. Rob, thanks to you as well. That's it from us. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.